He's, Get down, Ryan shouted, and then the world exploded. He's, He didn't know her name, didn't know who was hunting her, He's, or why four men with guns had just walked into a roadside diner in the middle of the Arizona desert, looking like they intended to leave with either a body or a secret. He's, All Ryan Mitchell knew, in that single crackling second between seeing the fear on her face and hearing the first chair scrape across the floor, was that she was alone and they were not. So he moved. Before we go any further, if you're watching this right now, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The Sundown Diner sat 17 miles outside of Tucson on a stretch of State 86 that most people only drove at night when they were too tired to care about scenery. It had been there since 1974. And it showed cracked vinyl booths patched with electrical tape. A jukebox that hadn't worked since Clinton was in office. A hand-painted sign above the register that said "We don't call 911" in faded red letters that somebody had thought was funny once. The coffee was terrible. The pie was outstanding. And on a Thursday evening in late October, it was the only place within 20 miles still serving hot food after 9 p. Ryan Mitchell had been coming here for 3 years. Every Thursday, without fail, after his late shift at Calderon's Auto Repair on the edge of town. He always took the same booth second from the window, left side, because you could see both the door and the parking lot from that seat. And Ryan was the kind of man who liked to know what was around him. Not because he was paranoid, because he was careful. There was a difference, though nobody had ever bothered to explain that to him. He'd figured it out on his own, the way he figured out most things. Quietly, without making a fuss about it. He was 28 years old, 6 feet even, with calloused hands and motor oil that never completely washed out from under his fingernails, no matter how hard he scrubbed. He had broad shoulders and a face that people described as honest, the kind of face that made strangers feel comfortable telling him things. He didn't talk much himself, he listened. He noticed. He paid attention to the small things that most people walked right past without a second glance. Because in his experience, the small things were usually where the truth was hiding. Tonight, the small thing was a young woman sitting alone in the corner booth. And the way she kept watching the door. He noticed her the moment he walked in. She was maybe 24, 25, with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes that were doing too much work scanning. Measuring, calculating for someone who was just eating alone on a Thursday night. She had a cup of coffee in front of her that she hadn't touched. Her jacket was still on. Her bag was on the seat beside her. Not the floor, positioned so she could grab it fast. And every 90 seconds or so, like clockwork, her eyes flicked to the door. Ryan ordered his usual black coffee, turkey melt, his side of fries, and he told himself it wasn't his business. He managed to believe that for about 4 minutes. Because the woman's body language wasn't just nervous. It was practiced. There was a difference between someone who was anxious and someone who had been running long enough that hypervigilance had become a habit. A second skin they put on every morning without thinking about it. Ryan had seen that look exactly once before in his life. On his older sister Sarah, when she'd finally left her ex-husband and spent 2 weeks sleeping on his couch. Waking up at every sound, positioning herself in every room so that her back was never to the door. This woman looked exactly like that. His food arrived. He ate slowly, kept his eyes mostly on his plate, and let his peripheral vision do the rest. She ordered nothing new. The coffee stayed cold. At one point, she took out her phone, stared at it for a long moment, then put it face down on the table like she'd decided against whatever she was about to do. 20 minutes passed. Ryan was finishing his coffee when the headlights swept across the front windows. Not one vehicle. 2. They came in fast and stopped hard. Which wasn't what got his attention. What got his attention was that both vehicles killed their lights before they parked. Which no civilian ever did in a parking lot unless they had a very specific reason not to be seen. Ryan set his coffee cup down. He didn't move. He watched the door. The first man threw it was big, not tall, but wide. With the kind of neck that belonged on a linebacker and a face that looked like it had been rearranged at least once. He was wearing a dark jacket, hands in his pockets. And his eyes went straight to the booths in the back before he'd even fully cleared the threshold. Not looking for a table, looking for a person. The second man came in, right behind him. He's younger, lean, wearing a cap pulled low. The third and fourth came in together, and one of them already had his hand inside his jacket. Ryan didn't know what they were carrying. He didn't need to. The posture was enough, the way they fanned out without speaking. The way the big one's gaze locked on the corner booth on her and went hard and flat, like a switch flipping. The woman saw them at the same moment. Her whole body went rigid. The color drained from her face. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just sat there for one frozen second with her hands flat on the table. And Ryan could see from 20 feet away that she was doing the math and didn't like any of the answers. The big man started walking toward her. Ryan was out of his booth before he fully decided to move. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't bravery in any organized sense. It was something more basic than that, the same instinct that makes you reach out to catch something falling before your brain has even registered what it is. He saw someone in danger. He moved. "Hey," he called out. He's loud enough to turn heads. "Excuse me." The big man stopped. Looked at Ryan. His expression said, "Who the hell are you?" "I think you've got the wrong place," Ryan said. His voice was steady. He was surprised by that. This diner's closed for a private event. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. The big man looked at Ryan the way you look at something that's in your way, not with anger yet. "Just assessment. Step aside," the man said. Not loud. That was almost worse. "I don't think I will," Ryan said. The woman was on her feet now. Ryan could hear her behind. The scrape of the booth, the quick intake of breath. The big man's eyes moved past Ryan's shoulder to her. And something shifted in his face, urgencies. Maybe, or the beginning of impatience. And Ryan saw the second man's hand come fully out of his jacket. That's when he shouted it. "Get down." Not to the men. To her. He threw himself sideways at the same moment the first shot cracked through the diner. And the world collapsed into chaos, screaming. The crash of dishes. The thunder of feet. Another shot that punched through the window above the booth where she'd been sitting half a second before. Ryan had his arm around her before he'd even fully processed that he'd crossed the room. Pulling her down behind the lunch counter while the cook was already flat on the floor and the waitress was screaming into her phone. 2 more shots, both high. Wild. Then shouting outside. An engine. Tires. Then silence. Not real silence, Ryan's ears were ringing. And somewhere behind him the waitress was still saying, "Oh God, oh God, oh God," in a fast, breathless loop, but the shooting had stopped. The men were gone. Ryan didn't know why. Didn't care yet. He was looking at the woman crouched beside him. Checking her hands. Her arms. Her face. Looking for blood that wasn't there. "Are you hit?" he said. She shook her head. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "Are you hit?" she asked. Ryan looked down at himself. His left arm had a long scrape from where he'd hit the edge of the counter going down. Bleeding but not serious. His shoulder ached in a way that would turn impressive colors by morning. He probed it with his fingers, felt the joint move the way it was supposed to. And made the decision that it wasn't his biggest problem. "No," he said. "I'm fine." She looked at him, then really looked at him. The way people look at you when something has just stripped away all the social armor and they're seeing exactly what's in front of them and nothing else. Her eyes were dark brown, wide, and right now completely unguarded in a way that Ryan suspected she normally worked very hard to prevent. "Why did you do that?" she asked. He didn't have a good answer. He said the only thing that was true. "You look scared." The police arrived 11 minutes later. Ryan knew because he'd been watching the clock above the register, an old analog thing with a Pepsi logo from 1989 and counting. Because counting was the thing his brain had decided to do, while the rest of him figured out what came next. He gave a statement first. Simple, accurate. 4 men. Two vehicles, direction of departure. The deputy, a young woman named Tran, who had the focused, ease, slightly tired energy of someone on a double shift, wrote everything down and asked him twice to confirm he hadn't seen the men before tonight. He confirmed it twice. The woman gave her name as Emily Carter. She was calm when she spoke to the deputies, calmer than she had any right to be, answering questions in complete sentences with the careful precision of someone who had thought a long time ago about what they would and wouldn't say in exactly this situation. She said she didn't know the men. She said she didn't know why they'd come in. She said she was just passing through. Ryan stood close enough to hear all of it and said nothing. But he noticed what she didn't say. She didn't say she was surprised. She didn't say she couldn't imagine why anyone would want to hurt her. She didn't do any of the things that innocent strangers caught in random violence actually do. Which is ask why in a tone of genuine bafflement. Emily Carter knew exactly why. She just wasn't saying. After the deputies finished with her, she came to stand beside Ryan in the parking lot while the tow truck handled the car whose rear window had taken one of the stray rounds. The desert night was cold, which always surprised people who didn't live here. The assumption was that Arizona stayed hot. But in October, the temperature dropped hard after dark, and the air had an edge to it that cut right through a jacket. She was shivering. He wasn't sure it was entirely from the cold. You don't have to stay, she said without looking at him. I know, a moment of quiet. A police radio crackled somewhere behind them. They'll come back, she said, still not looking at him. Just stating a fact, the way you might observe that rain was coming by reading the clouds. I don't know when, but they'll come back. Ryan turned that over. Who are they? People who want something I have. What is it? She finally looked at him. The expression on her face was complicated, not quite apology. Not quite warning. Information, she said. The kind that ends careers. Ends more than careers, actually. He waited. I've been carrying it for 4 months, she said. 4 months of moving every 2 weeks, changing phones. Staying in cash-only places. And tonight I made a mistake. I stopped moving long enough to eat a real meal. A pause. I was so tired. The weariness in those last 3 words hit him with a weight that surprised him. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the other kind. Do you have somewhere to go tonight, he asked. The look she gave him was sharp. Reflexive, the look of someone calculating threat before they can stop themselves. He didn't flinch from it. He understood it. Not an offer, he said. A question. She looked away again. No, he thought about it for exactly as long as it took to exhale. There's a motel 6 miles up the road, the Mesquite Inn. Old couple runs it. Been there 40 years. Nobody looking for someone passes through there, because nobody going anywhere on purpose goes to the Mesquite Inn. He paused. You'd be safe for 1 night. She didn't say yes. But she also didn't say no. Ryan followed her there in his truck. Not because she asked him to, because the men who'd come into the diner had driven away in a hurry, which meant something had spooked them, maybe the shots. Maybe a witness, maybe someone who saw the plate. It didn't mean they were gone. It meant they'd regrouped, and regroup was different from gone. Dorothy Navarro, who had been running the Mesquite Inn since 1983, and had the kind of calm authority that came from 4 decades of managing whatever people brought in off the highway. At 2 in the morning, took 1 look at Emily and 1 look at Ryan, and didn't ask any questions that she didn't strictly need to ask. She gave Emily a room on the far end of the building, furthest from the road, and told her checkout was at 11, but not to worry about it. Ryan sat in his truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes after Emily went inside. He didn't know what he was waiting for. Nothing happened. The desert was quiet. The stars were enormous the way they only got out here. Away from city light, and the cold had fully settled in and was making itself comfortable. He started his truck. He made it 6 blocks before he turned around. It wasn't a decision so much as an inevitability, and he was honest enough with himself to acknowledge it. He went back to the Mesquite and parked where he could see her room. And he tilted his seat back slightly and closed his eyes without fully sleeping. which he was good at, which was a skill he'd developed during 2 years of working the night shift alone in a garage that didn't have great locks. He was still there when the phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. Not his phone, Emily's. He could hear it through the thin wall of the motel. Or maybe it was the thin construction of the door. But the ring was distinctive, a real ringtone, not the default. Something that had been specifically chosen, and it rang 4 times and then stopped. And then started again immediately, which was the code people used when it was urgent. 30 seconds later, her door opened. She looked at him in his truck without any sign of surprise. Maybe she'd been watching. Maybe she'd expected it. She came to the driver's side window and he rolled it down. I have to go, she said. Who called? She hesitated. That was interesting. The hesitation meant she was deciding how much to say, which meant there was more to say than she'd offered last night. Someone who's been trying to find me, she said. Someone on my side. Another pause. Smaller. Someone who's going to be very unhappy when I tell him what happened last night. Who? She looked at him steadily. My father. Ryan waited. He had learned years ago that when someone says my father in that particular tone, heavy, complicated, layered with things, they're not saying the right move is to wait and let the silence do the asking. His name is Marcus Sinclair, she said. He's the vice president of the local Hells Angels chapter. The desert was very quiet. Ryan said. Okay. Emily blinked. That's all you've got? Okay. What would you like me to say? Most people have a bigger reaction. I'm not most people. He thought about it for a second. Is he coming here? He'll send someone. Then you probably shouldn't be standing in a parking lot. She almost smiled. Almost. She caught it and pulled it back, but not quite fast enough. You're an unusual person, Ryan Mitchell. He hadn't told her his name. She'd gotten it from the deputies then. She'd been paying attention. He filed that away. Get inside, he said. I'll knock when someone shows. She went back inside. Ryan got out of his truck, walked to the vending machine at the end of the lot. Bought 2 coffees in paper cups that were going to taste like recycled cardboard. And settled in to wait. They came at 9:43. 3 bikes. Not loud cruising bikes built for show, these were road bikes. Serious machines ridden by men who knew how to cover distance and arrive looking like they had more gas in the tank than when they started. They came in without theater. Parked in a line. And the man who got off the lead bike first was in his mid-50s. Silver at his temples, moving with a kind of deliberate quietness that Ryan associated with people who had learned a very long time ago that the ones to watch were never the ones making the most noise. He was wearing a cut, VP patch on the chest. He looked at Ryan in the parking lot with dark, measuring eyes. Ryan looked back. You're the one who pulled my daughter down, the man said. Not a question. Yes, sir. Something moved across the man's face. Something brief and complicated. Marcus Sinclair, he said. And extended his hand. Ryan shook it. Direct. Ryan Mitchell. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. The way you look at something you need to accurately assess. It. Then he looked at Emily's door. Is she inside? Yes, hurt? No, you? Ryan lifted his left arm slightly. Where the scrape had been bandaged by Dorothy Navarro with surprising efficiency and a complete absence of commentary. Nothing serious. Marcus looked at the bandage, then at Ryan's face. Then he nodded once, slowly, like he was filing something away that he intended to return to. Come inside, he said. Not to Ryan. To the air in general, which meant both of them. The room felt very small with Marcus Sinclair's energy in it. He wasn't a large man, exactly. But he had a presence that reorganized the space around him. And the 2 men who'd come with him positioned themselves near the door without being asked. Which said something about how long they'd been doing this together. Emily sat on the edge of the bed. Marcus pulled the single chair and sat across from her. And for a moment, neither of them said anything, and Ryan understood, with the particular perception that had always been one of his more useful qualities. That he was watching a conversation that had been waiting to happen for a long time. Coates found you, Marcus said. Emily's jaw tightened. 3 times in the last month. Last night was the closest. I know. Please, I heard. Marcus's voice was controlled, almost expressionless. Only the muscle in his jaw gave it away. You should have called me. Please. I didn't want to bring this to you. It's already at my door. Please. It's been at my door since the beginning. Calling me wouldn't have brought it there. It would have just meant I knew about it. She looked away. Please, I was afraid you'd. She stopped. What? His voice had gone very quiet. Please. What were you afraid I'd do? Handle it the way you handle things. She said it without accusation. Please. Which made it land harder. Just a fact. And I didn't want anyone getting hurt because of information I stumbled onto by accident. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Please, then what did you stumble onto exactly? Emily glanced at Ryan. Please. Marcus followed the glance. He looked at Ryan steadily. Please. Can I ask what your stake is in this? No stake, Ryan said. Please. I was eating dinner. And now you're here at 9 in the morning. She didn't have backup. Please. I figured someone should. Marcus held his gaze for a long, deliberate moment. Then he turned back to Emily. Tell me everything. What Emily told him took 40 minutes. Please. Ryan listened without interrupting, because there was nothing he needed to say yet, and everything he needed to understand. Please. He had always processed information better when he was still. Please. His mother used to call it his great stillness, sometimes with fondness. Please. Sometimes with a mild, loving exasperation. Emily had been working as a junior auditor for a logistics company called Meridian Transport, the name chosen, she said, for how deliberately unremarkable it was. 6 months ago, running a routine audit on their regional accounts, she'd found a discrepancy. Not large at first glance. A rounding error maybe. The kind of thing that could have been a data entry mistake and usually was. Except that the same discrepancy appeared in 17 separate accounts across 4 states. Always in the same pattern, always timed to specific windows that corresponded to nothing in Meridian's official shipping calendar. She'd gone deeper. She'd been careful, or she'd thought she was careful. She'd used her own laptop, not company equipment. She'd kept the records on an encrypted drive. She hadn't told anyone, but someone had noticed anyway. She'd come home 4 months ago to find her apartment had been gone through. Not ransacked, that was the disturbing part. Carefully searched. Deliberately, by people who knew what they were looking for and didn't want her to know they'd been there. She'd noticed only because she had a habit of leaving a single piece of Scotch tape across the inside of her laptop bag zipper, something her father had taught her. Years ago, as a joke almost. The tape was broken. She'd walked back out of her apartment. Gone to a gas station 3 blocks away, bought a burner phone, and started running. What did you find? Marcus asked. In the accounts. Money, she said. Moving in patterns that don't make sense for a shipping company. Into accounts that should be dormant. Timed to look like freight payments, but not actually corresponding to any freight. She paused. $14 million over 18 months. Maybe more. I only found the regional portion. Marcus didn't react visibly. But the 2 men by the door exchanged a glance, fast and flat. And Coates, Marcus said. Victor Coates. He's the name on the accounts at the top. Or as close to the top as I could trace. He's an intermediary. There's money above him too. I know who Coates is, Marcus said quietly. Emily stopped. How? Marcus stood up. He walked to the window and stood with his back to them. Which Ryan read as someone who needed a moment to organize what they were about to say and wanted their face private while they did it. Victor Coates, Marcus said, has been trying to use Hell's Angels distribution network to move his money for 2 years. We told him no. A pause. He didn't take it well. Emily's voice had gone very still. What does that mean? Marcus turned from the window. His eyes went to Ryan, first measuring again, adding something, and then to his daughter. It means, he said, that Coates has been looking for leverage against us as long as he's been looking for your evidence. It means that the thing you've been carrying is more dangerous than you know. And it means he stopped. And it means what? Emily pressed. Marcus looked at Ryan for a moment longer than felt casual. It means whoever told Coates that you were running, and where you were going, and when you'd stop moving, he let it sit there. Ease. Ryan felt the shape of what wasn't being said settle into the room like weather coming in. Somebody inside told him, Ryan said. Marcus met his eyes. Ease. Yes, the word landed like a stone hitting still water. Ease. Emily's face went through three things at once: disbelief, ease, recognition, grief. And Ryan understood then, with a clarity that had nothing to do with any particular training and everything to do with having paid close attention to people his whole life. Ease. That the story he'd walked into the middle of last night was not a simple story. Ease. It was not going to get simpler, and the woman sitting on the edge of the motel bed had been carrying a weight that would have broken most people 4 months ago. Ease. She hadn't broken, but she was very tired. Marcus looked at his daughter. Ease. His expression had softened by a degree that Ryan suspected most people never saw. Ease. You should have called me, he said quietly. Emily said nothing. Ease. But her shoulders dropped the way shoulders drop when someone has been braced against something for a very long time and just ran out of the energy to keep bracing. I know, she said. Just that. I know. Ryan looked at the door. Ease. At the two men standing there, at the three bikes visible through the window. Ease. At the measured, deliberate face of Marcus Sinclair. Ease. Vice President of the Hells Angels, and a man who was now sitting in a motel room in the Arizona desert because his daughter had been running for her life and hadn't called him. Ease. He looked at Emily, who had trusted a total stranger last night with her safety, and was now sitting very still while the shape of the real danger came into focus. Ease. He looked at his own bandaged arm. He thought about the four men who'd come into the diner. Ease. The way the big one had looked at Emily, not with anger. Ease. With something colder than anger, professional, methodical. Ease. They'd had her location. They'd known what she looked like. Ease. They'd known where she stopped. Someone had told them. Ease. Ryan set his coffee down on the nightstand. It was mostly empty anyway. Ease. He looked at Marcus Sinclair, who was already watching him. Ease. So Ryan said, what happens now? Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Ease. A man taking the full measure of another man. That, Marcus said, is an excellent question. Marcus Sinclair was not a man who asked questions twice. Ryan had figured that out in the first 20 minutes of knowing him, the way he listened. The way his eyes moved, the way he let silence do work that most people filled with noise. When Marcus asked something and you answered, he stored it somewhere deep and permanent, and he didn't need to revisit it. He trusted his own perception. Which was why, when Marcus looked at Ryan Mitchell, a mechanic from Tucson who had no business being in any room that Marcus Sinclair occupied, and said, "You're coming with us," it wasn't a test. It was a conclusion. Ryan looked at him. "I've got a shift at 7. Call in. I can't just... Your arm needs looking at." You can't work a shift with that arm." Marcus paused. And you know things about last night that I need to understand before they become a problem. Emily, who had been watching this exchange from the edge of the bed with the careful attention of someone monitoring a situation that could go several different directions, said, "He saved my life, Dad. He doesn't owe you anything." "I know that." Marcus's voice was even. "I'm not collecting a debt. I'm asking a man with good judgment to share what he saw." He looked at Ryan. That's all." Ryan thought about his apartment, his shift, his ordinary Thursday night life that had been going along just fine until approximately 9:45 p.m. the night before. He thought about the 4 men in the diner. The way one of them had his hand inside his jacket before the door had even fully closed behind him. He called Calderon's and left a message. They drove southwest. Marcus rode his bike. Ryan drove his truck, and Emily sat in the passenger seat and didn't say much for the first 10 miles. Watching the desert go past with the expression of someone recalibrating after a very long time spent looking over their shoulder. Your father's not what I expected," Ryan said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know." More theater." Emily made a sound that was almost a laugh. He saves the theater for people who need to be impressed." You didn't need to be impressed. How could he tell? You weren't scared of him. Ryan considered that. Should I be? That depends entirely on where you stand, she said. And then quieter, "You're standing in a good place." They drove the rest of the way without talking, which was comfortable in a way that Ryan noticed and filed away. Ease. Because comfortable silence between two people who met 20 hours ago was not nothing. Ease. The compound, though compound felt like the wrong word for it. Ease. Too military, too dramatic was a property about 12 miles outside of town. Ease. A sprawling single-story building with a workshop attached and enough open land on all sides to ensure that nobody arrived unannounced. Ease. The gate was already open when they got there, which meant Marcus had called ahead. Ease. Two men were waiting in the yard. One of them Ryan didn't know. Ease. The other one, a heavy-set man in his late 40s, with a beard going gray at the edges and a prosthetic left hand that he made no attempt to conceal, introduced himself as Deke without offering anything else. Ease. Which was fine, because Ryan wasn't in the market for more information than he needed. Ease. Marcus walked them inside and straight to the back of the building. Ease. To a room that was clearly his working space functional. Ease. Spare. With a long table covered in papers and a whiteboard on one wall that had been recently wiped but not quite clean enough. Ease. The ghost of previous writing still faintly visible under the surface. Ease. He stood at the head of the table. Deke took a position along the wall. Ease. The two men who'd ridden from the motel settled in without chairs. Ease, which seemed to be their preference. Ryan sat. Emily stood. Ease, which told him she'd been in this room before and had her own relationship with the space. Ease. Walk me through last night again, Marcus said to Ryan. Ease. From the beginning, everything you noticed, Ryan walked him through it. Ease. He was precise, and he was complete. The vehicles arriving with lights off. Ease. The way they fanned out without speaking. The specific way the big man's gaze had gone to Emily's booth before he'd even cleared the threshold. Ease. He described the shot patterns, the direction of departure. Ease. He mentioned the sound of the engine on the second vehicle, a specific catch in the idle that suggested the exhaust had been modified. Ease. Possibly recently, the kind of thing you noticed when you spent 8 hours a day diagnosing engine problems. Ease. When he finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. The big man, he said. Ease. Describe his hands. Ryan thought back. Large, the right one had a scar across the knuckles. Ease. Straight line old. Healed clean. Deliberate. Deke straightened against the wall. Ease. He and Marcus exchanged a look that was brief and heavy. He's Reyes, Deke said, not a question. Marcus nodded once. He's Anton Reyes. He's Coates' primary field coordinator. He looked at Ryan. He doesn't do small jobs. He doesn't do reconnaissance. When Coates sends Reyes, it means he wants the thing done and done that night. So why did they run? Emily asked. Because Marcus said, someone called them off. Another silence. Different quality this time. Who has the authority to call Reyes off mid-operation? Emily said slowly. Someone above Coates in the chain, or someone who told Coates something changed. Marcus paused. He let the implication breathe. They got spooked by something. What happened right before they left? Ryan thought about it. One of the men, not Reyes, the younger one near the door, looked at his phone. Maybe 30 seconds before they moved out. Marcus looked at Deke. They received a message, which means someone was watching the situation in real time, Deke said. Not just feeding them the location, actively monitoring. The room had gone very still. Emily's face had done something complicated. That's not an outsider, she said. You don't monitor a field operation in real time unless you're inside the communication loop. Coates' people are good, but they're not that good. They'd need someone feeding them information from our end. Marcus looked at his daughter. The expression on his face was controlled. Everything about him was controlled. But Ryan, who had spent a lifetime watching people's faces, saw what was underneath the control, something that looked very much like grief wearing anger's clothing. Yes, Marcus said. That's what I think too. Deke cleared his throat. We need to discuss. I know what we need to discuss, Marcus said quietly. And the quietness of it stopped Deke completely. Ryan looked at the two men by the door. Then at Deke, then at Marcus. He was running the math, and he didn't need a lot of time to get there. How many people knew Emily's general location, he asked. Marcus looked at him. In our organization, yes. A pause. 6. And how many of those 6 also knew about the Coates situation and the network that's been trying to use your infrastructure? The room got very quiet. 4, Marcus said. Ryan nodded slowly. That's your window. Marcus looked at him steadily. Geez, you arrived at that quickly. It's not complicated math. No, Marcus agreed. Geez, it isn't. He was quiet for a moment, which is exactly what makes it so goddamn hard. Because those four people weren't strangers. Geez, Ryan understood that without needing it explained. Geez, they were men Marcus had worked beside, ridden beside. He's trusted with things that couldn't be untrusted. The math was simple. Geez, the math was also devastating. Emily said, "There's something else." Everyone looked at her. Geez, she reached into the inside pocket of her jacket and produced a small encrypted drive. Geez, Ryan recognized the type civilian grade, but solid. Geez, she set it on the table. "This is what I've been carrying for 4 months," she said. "Geez, this is what Coates wants." Marcus looked at it. "Geez, he didn't reach for it." "What's on it?" Deke asked. "Geez, everything I found. Account numbers, transaction records, geez, timing logs. Enough to show a federal prosecutor that Meridian Transport is a shell company laundering money for a criminal network that operates across at least 4 states. She paused. Geez. And enough to show that Coates has been receiving payments from a source I haven't been able to identify yet. Geez. Someone who's been funding his operation for at least 3 years. An investor, Marcus said. Geez. Or a partner, Emily said. Someone with a lot of money and a lot of interest in keeping Coates operational. Ryan was watching Marcus's face. Geez. Something had shifted there, something small, a change in the set of his jaw. Geez, a recalculation happening behind his eyes. "When did you compile this?" Marcus asked. "Geez, over 6 months. But the last entry," Emily stopped. "Geez, the last entry is from 3 weeks ago. I found one more account. Geez, one I didn't expect." Marcus waited. "It's connected to a real estate company. Geez, holding company, technically. Lots of layers. But when I went through the layers, she stopped again. Geez, this time it wasn't for effect. She was having difficulty with whatever came next. Geez, it traces back to someone who has a financial relationship with this chapter. Geez, with the angels. Specifically, the room was absolutely still. Geez, Deke's prosthetic hand made a small sound against the wall as his posture changed. "Say that plainly," Marcus said. His voice had not risen. Geez, it was if anything quieter. That was worse. Emily looked at her father. "Geez, someone in your chapter has a financial connection to the people trying to kill me. Geez, not just a leak, a financial connection. They've been profiting from this." Ryan watched Marcus Sinclair absorb that. Geez. He watched a man who had spent decades in situations that required absolute composure hold himself together with the controlled precision of someone squeezing a fist around something that hurt. "Geez, do you have the name?" Marcus asked. "Not yet. The layers are, when will you have it? If I can get back online safely and trace the last 2 holding companies 24 hours. Geez, maybe less." Marcus looked at Deke. Deke looked back. Geez, something passed between them wordless, dense with history and implication. "Geez, nobody talks about this," Marcus said. "Nobody in this room. Geez, nothing goes out on phones or digital." "We go dark as of right now, Marcus," one of the men by the door started. "It's dark," Marcus said. No softening this time. Just the word. Flat and final as a door closing. Ryan had been quiet for several minutes. "Geez, now," he said. "If your own communication is compromised, geez, you need to assume whoever's in your organization is already aware that Emily's here." Marcus looked at him. "Geez, which means you have a closing window," Ryan said. "Geez, if they know she's with you, and they know she has evidence connecting someone in your chapter to Coates' network, they're not going to wait." "What would you suggest?" Marcus asked. Geez, and the question was genuine. Ryan could tell the difference between a man testing you and a man actually asking. "Geez, move the evidence," Ryan said. "Not just the drive. Geez, move Emily. Keep them separated. If something goes wrong with one, geez, the other survives. And get someone outside your communication network to help trace those final accounts." A pause. "Geez, you have someone in mind?" Marcus asked. "I know someone who does forensic accounting consulting. He's retired IRS. Doesn't like criminals." Deke made a sound. "Geez, it might have been respect. You know a retired IRS forensic accountant. She fixed my truck last year. Geez, we got to talking." Emily, despite everything, made that almost lost sound again. "Geez." Marcus looked at Ryan for a long measuring moment. "Geez, you're not what I expected either," he said. "People keep telling me that. It's not a small compliment." Ryan held his gaze. He's, I know. Marcus nodded once, that same slow filing it away nod. He's. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down, which was the first time Ryan had seen him sit. Ease. And somehow it changed the whole register of the room. Ease. Not weakness, the opposite. The kind of stillness that's available only to people who've stopped needing to perform. Ease. Coates will move tonight, he said. He doesn't have a choice anymore. Ease. Emily's in the open, the evidence is accounted for. Ease. And his man Reyes came back empty-handed. Whatever patience he had is gone. He looked at his daughter. Ease, you understand what that means. It means we don't have 24 hours, Emily said. Ease, you have maybe 12, 10, if he's already in motion. Ryan looked at the drive sitting on the table. He's small enough to fit in a shirt pocket, containing enough, he's apparently, to end careers and more than careers. He thought about the word Emily had used. He's carrying it for 4 months. He thought about what that felt like, 4 months of never putting it down. He's never setting it anywhere you might have to run without it. He's 4 months of it being both your only weapon and your biggest liability. He's what's on the drive, is it duplicated anywhere? He asked. He's Emily shook her head. I didn't dare. Anytime you copy something, you create another point of exposure. Then we need to get copies made before we separate it from you. Somewhere they can't intercept the transmission. How? Ryan thought for a second. There's a guy I know who runs a server out of his house. He's former military, handles data for a couple of law firms in Phoenix. His connection is physical cable, no wireless, and he has protocol logging that would catch any intrusion attempt inside 90 seconds. He paused. He owes me a favor. Marcus looked at him. How many favors do people owe you? Enough, you're a mechanic. People trust their cars to me, Ryan said simply. Cars are important. When someone's car is important and I take care of it, I remember that and they remember that, that's all. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then I've been running an organization for 22 years. One of the things that's kept it alive is knowing who to trust when it matters. He paused. I'm going to trust you. Ryan said nothing. He understood that it wasn't a statement looking for a response. It was a commitment. Marcus Sinclair was telling him something. He's not asking him anything. Deke pushed off the wall and said, we need to move in the next 30 minutes if we're going to get ahead of this. Agreed. Marcus stood. He looked at his daughter, and for just a moment, half a second, the blink of an eye, the operational composure dropped, and something purely parental looked out from his face. Raw and unguarded and enormous. Then he pulled it back together. You okay? Emily met his eyes. I'm better than I was last night. That's not the same as okay, I know. She picked up the drive and held it for a moment. But it's enough to keep moving. Marcus nodded. He looked at Ryan. You ride a bike? Truck only, then you're with her. He said it without any additional framing, which was, Ryan was beginning to understand. How Marcus Sinclair gave orders clean. Complete, trusting the other person to understand what was expected. Ryan understood. They had 10 hours maybe. A drive with compromised intelligence. Evidence that pointed at someone inside the organization. And whoever was inside was now aware, or would be soon, that Emily was here. That Marcus knew that the drive still existed and was still in play. Ryan walked out to his truck. Deke fell into step beside him. One thing, Deke said quietly. So only Ryan could hear. The man Marcus is thinking about. The one in our organization. Ryan waited. He's been with us for 11 years, Deke said. 11 years, he let that sit. So when we find out it's him, and we will, what comes next is not going to be clean, Ryan said. It never is. Deke looked at him sidelong. No, he said. It's not. He stopped walking. But Marcus is going to want to handle it himself. And I need someone around who will look him in the eye and tell him if he's about to make a decision he can't undo. Why me? Because you don't owe him anything, Deke said. Which means you're the only person in that building right now who can say no to him and have it actually land. He paused. Can you do that? Ryan thought about it honestly. I can try. Deke looked at him for a moment, then nodded. And walked back toward the building without another word. Emily came out a minute later with her bag over one shoulder and the drive in her inside pocket. She walked to the passenger side of Ryan's truck and got in without saying anything. Ryan got in. He started the engine. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My place first. I need to make a call and get some things." Then we go to Phoenix." "Your place." She turned that over. "So they'll know where you live." "They probably already know where I live," Ryan said. "From last night, my name went into the police report." She absorbed that. "And that doesn't bother you." Ryan looked out at the property. At Marcus standing in the yard, talking to the two men who'd ridden from the motel. At Deke disappearing back inside. At all of it, the complexity and the danger, and the thing he'd walked into at 9:45 last night over a turkey melt and terrible coffee. "It bothers me," he said. "But being bothered doesn't change the math." He pulled out of the yard and onto the road. Behind them, the property grew small in the rearview mirror. Emily rode in silence for a while. Then she said, "The account I found." The one with the financial connection to the chapter. Ryan waited. "I've been trying to figure out who it is for 3 weeks," she said. "I went through everything I had, cross-referenced every name I could find against the holding company's registered contacts. I got close 3 times and hit a dead end each time. But last night, when I was sitting in that diner waiting and trying not to think about the fact that I didn't know how much longer I could keep running." She stopped. Started again. "I remembered something. A payment timing. The last transfer from the holding company to Coates' account happened on a date that I recognized." "Why did you recognize it?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because my father told me years ago that the chapter always holds its full membership meeting on the first Thursday of every month. No exceptions." He was proud of that. The consistency. The reliability of it. Another pause. "The transfer happened on a first Thursday. At 11 in the morning, which is exactly when those meetings begin." Ryan understood before she finished the sentence. Whoever made that transfer was doing it from the meeting. Or covering that they couldn't have made it from the meeting. Or creating an alibi, she said. If the transfer logs at 11, and you can prove you were sitting in a chapter meeting at 11, you didn't do it. Except that the payment timing was someone telling you exactly who could do that, Ryan said. If you're in the meeting and you triggered the transfer remotely, timed to the meeting itself, you thought you were being clever. But they were being arrogant, Emily finished. They thought I'd never look at the timing. They thought the account layers would stop anyone who got that far. They were almost right. Almost, she said. Ryan drove. The desert stretched out on both sides. Flat and wide and absolutely indifferent, the way the desert always was. He thought about arrogance. He thought about 11 years of trust. Being used as cover while someone sold information to people who wanted to put a bullet in a young woman running alone through a string of cash-only motel rooms. He thought about the first Thursday of every month. How many people are in those meetings? He asked. I don't know, but my father would. Ryan nodded. He pressed the accelerator and watched the speedometer climb. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a calculation was assembling itself, not a complicated one, but one with weight to it, the kind of weight that settled in your chest and stayed. They were getting close to a name, and the closer they got, the more dangerous every person who knew Emily was alive was going to become. He reached over and turned the radio on static. He turned it off again. Ryan, Emily said. Yeah, for what it's worth, and I know it's not worth much yet, because we don't know each other and everything is. She made a small gesture that meant all of this. You didn't have to do any of this, any of it. Last night or this morning or any of it. He said nothing. So thank you. She simply, no performance in it. Ryan looked at the road. He thought about the woman in the diner who'd been sitting alone, watching the door with practiced exhausted vigilance, and a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. He thought about the moment he'd decided to move before he'd decided anything at all. Don't thank me yet, he said. We're not done. It wasn't a deflection. It was a promise. She heard the difference. He saw it in the way her posture shifted. Just slightly not relaxing exactly, but adjusting. Redistributing the weight of what she'd been carrying. leaving some of it in the space between them where someone else could help hold it for a while. That was enough. He drove. Ryan's apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a man who lived alone. Worked long hours and spent whatever energy he had left on things that mattered rather than things that looked good. Functional. Clean in the way that military cleanliness is clean, nothing unnecessary. Everything in its place, the kind of order that comes from habit rather than pride. Emily stood in the middle of it while he moved through the rooms with the efficiency of someone who'd already decided what he needed before he walked through the door. She didn't offer commentary. She watched. He pulled a duffel from the closet and packed it in under 4 minutes. Change of clothes, a field first aid kit that was significantly more comprehensive than anything you'd buy at a drugstore. A waterproof case for documents. And from the back of a kitchen drawer, a folded piece of paper with a phone number written in pen that he transferred to his wallet without explaining. "Is the IRS woman?" Emily asked. "No, that's separate." He zipped the bag. "The paper is someone else. How many people do you have?" "A few." She tilted her head slightly. "You live alone in a desert town and work on cars, and you have a network." "It's not a network," he said. "It's just people I paid attention to." He called the server contact first, a man named Cal, who picked up on the second ring and listened without interrupting while Ryan explained what he needed. Cal's silence during explanations was the kind that meant he was processing. Not dismissing. And when Ryan finished, Cal said 3 words. "How long out?" "Hour 40. I'll be ready." That was it. Ryan hung up. He called the IRS contact next to a woman named Vera, who had the phone manner of someone who'd spent 30 years deposing people and never quite turned it off. She listened to the account structure Emily had described. The holding company layers, the transfer timing, and asked 2 very specific questions about routing number formats that told Ryan she'd already started working the problem before the call was finished. "First Thursday of the month," Vera repeated. 11A. "Transfer, yes. That's sloppy," she said. "Arrogant. That's what we said. Give me the top-level account number and I'll have the ownership chain by the time you get to Phoenix." A pause. "Assuming the chain is what you think it is, this goes federal." "You understand that?" "Yes. Federal means it goes big and it goes slow." "Are your people prepared for slow?" Ryan looked at Emily. "They'll have to be." He hung up. Emily was watching him with the expression she'd been wearing since the motel room, that particular quality of attention that wasn't quite assessment and wasn't quite trust yet, but was somewhere in the territory between them, edging toward trust, the way something moves toward warmth without fully committing. "Ready," he said. "I've been ready for 4 months," she said. "I'm just not used to having backup." They were out the door in 90 seconds. He drove the first 20 miles watching his mirrors more than the road. Not paranoid systematic. He had a method. Check at 30-second intervals. Vary the pattern. Note anything that appeared more than twice in different contexts. It was the same method he used to diagnose intermittent electrical faults in engines. And it had the same logic. Most problems weren't random. They were patterns that hadn't been recognized yet. Nothing followed them. Or nothing he could see. That was the part that bothered him. Reyes and his men had pulled back from the diner because someone called them off. Someone monitoring the situation in real time, which meant there was surveillance active somewhere, not necessarily physical, possibly digital, possibly through the communication channels Marcus had already shut down. But something was feeding Coates's people information. And shutting down the chapter's internal communications didn't guarantee the feed was cut. It only guaranteed Marcus's people couldn't talk to each other about it. "Tell me about the chapter," Ryan said, "not as a distraction. As information gathering." Emily looked at him. "What about it? Your father said 4 people knew your general location." "Who are they?" She was quiet for a moment. "Deke." "That's one. You trust Deke?" "My father trusts Deke. 17 years. He's the one who found my father when his first business went under and gave him a reason to keep going." She paused. "If Deke's the leak, then nothing makes sense and we have nothing." So we assume Deke is clean, Ryan said. Who else? A man named Garrett Hollis, road captain. He's the one who coordinated the 2 attempts to bring me in safely before I started running. Both times the pickup location was compromised before he got there. She said it flatly. Just facts. But Ryan caught the undertone: 2 attempts at safety. Both failed. Both probably terrifying. That's 2, he said. A man named Pete Suarez, treasurer. He handles the chapter's finances, and he's the one who would recognize any irregularity in an account connected to the organization. She paused. Which is exactly why having him in on the plan made sense. He'd catch anything. Coates tried to move through legitimate channels, unless Suarez is the irregularity. Unless that, her voice had gone flat again. That careful flatness of someone keeping emotion at arm's length because they can't afford it right now. 4th person? Tommy Reeves, she said, and this time the flatness didn't quite hold. Something shifted in her voice, small, almost imperceptible. But Ryan heard it. He's been with the chapter for 11 years. He's the one my father calls when something needs to be done right. He's not just done right. She stopped. What? He was close to me, she said. When I was a teenager and my father was a breath. My father was complicated when I was growing up. The life created distance. Tommy was the one who showed up, taught me to ride, came to my college graduation. Another pause. He's family. He's not in name. And Ryan drove. If he understood, now why Deke had pulled him aside at the compound. When we find out it's him, what comes next is not going to be clean. And Marcus is going to want to handle it himself. And I need someone who will look him in the eye. 11 years. College graduation. The one who showed up when Marcus was complicated. Ryan looked at the road and did not say what he was thinking. Because what he was thinking was that the math pointed at Tommy Reeves with the specific, quiet certainty of evidence that had no emotional stake in the answer. Vera's going to pull the ownership chain, he said instead. We'll know the name when we get to Cal's. Emily said nothing. Which meant she already knew. She'd been carrying the suspicion for 3 weeks. She'd said, cross-referencing names, hitting dead ends. She knew what the first Thursday timing meant. She'd been hoping the final accounting would contradict what she already believed. Ryan had seen that before. The hope that the math would come out differently if you ran it one more time. It never did. They drove. 40 minutes out from Phoenix. Emily's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression changed. Marcus, she said. She answered on speaker without being asked to. Ryan appreciated that. Where are you? Marcus said. No preamble. 40 out from Phoenix. Heading to the contact Ryan mentioned. Good. A pause. And in the pause, something that might have been relief. I need you to listen to me carefully. I'm listening. Tommy came to see me 20 minutes ago. Marcus's voice had that careful, over-controlled quality of someone speaking through something large. He said he'd heard from someone that you were at the compound this morning. He wanted to know if you were safe. Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel. How did he hear? Emily asked. He said one of the men at the gate mentioned it to his wife. That it went through 2 people and came back to him. A long pause. It's plausible, but, Emily said. But the men at the gate have standing orders not to discuss anything they see coming in and out. Those orders exist specifically because of the situation with Coates. They know that. They've known it for 2 months. Emily was very still in the passenger seat. Where's Tommy now? Ryan asked. A brief pause, Marcus registering Ryan's presence on the call. Recalibrating. I told him you were somewhere safe and that I was handling it. He pushed for specifics. I didn't give them. Another pause. He pushed harder than felt natural. What did you tell him? That I needed to make some calls and I'd loop him in by tonight. Marcus's voice had gone to that quiet register again. The one that was worse than raised. He accepted it. He's still on property, Marcus, Emily said carefully. You need to keep him there. I know. Don't let on that anything's changed. Act like he's still. She stopped. The word she hadn't said was trusted. I know how to do this, Marcus said quietly. I've known how to do this since before you were born. The pain in his voice was controlled and completely real. Dad, her own voice had shifted, softer, something underneath the operational talk that was just his daughter. Please, are you okay? A long silence, longer than the question required. Please, call me when you have the name, he said, and hung up. Please. Emily sat with the phone in her hands for a moment. Please. Ryan said nothing, because there was nothing useful to say. Please. And useful was the only category he trusted right now. Please. It's him, she said. Not a question. Just the thing she'd been trying not to say for 3 weeks. Please. Finally out in the open, where it had weight and temperature, and could be felt. Please. We don't have the name yet, Ryan said. Ryan, I know. He said it the way you say I know when you mean I hear you, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Please. I know. She put the phone in her jacket pocket and folded her hands in her lap and looked out the windshield. Please. And Ryan watched her do the thing people do when they're grieving something, while simultaneously having no time to grieve it, compress it. Please set it somewhere internal, leave it for later. It was an act of discipline. Please, he respected it. Tell me about Tommy, he said. Not the suspicion. He's the person. She looked at him. Because when this is over, please, you're going to need to have felt it before you can put it down, he said. Please, might as well start now. She was quiet for a long moment. Please. Then she said he laughed at everything. That was the first thing you noticed. Please. Situations that would make other people tense, he'd find the thing in it that was absurd. Please. And he'd point to it, and somehow you'd be laughing too, and the tension would be half of what it was. A pause. Please. My father doesn't laugh easily. Tommy could always make him laugh. Ryan drove. He came to my graduation with flowers, she said. Please. My father forgot. He was handling something. Tommy came with these enormous sunflowers in a gas station wrapper because he'd bought them at the last minute. And he was so embarrassed about the gas station wrapper. But I told him it was the best bouquet I'd ever gotten. He kept the photo from that day on his phone. Ryan said nothing. I don't understand it, she said, quietly. I've been trying to understand it for 3 weeks, and I don't. He had everything. He was respected. He was part of something real. Her voice had tightened. What does money do for you that doesn't? Ryan thought about it honestly. Sometimes it's not about what the money gets you. Sometimes it's about not feeling like you have less than someone else. Sometimes people do terrible things because they've been quietly keeping score and they finally stopped being able to stand the count. Emily looked at him. That's a very unheroic explanation. Most explanations are. Cal's property was another 6 miles outside of Phoenix proper. He's along single story on a dirt road with no mailbox number visible from the turnoff. Which was intentional. Ryan had been there twice. Both times at Cal's invitation. Both times for reasons that were straightforward enough that Cal hadn't needed to ask too many questions. Cal was waiting outside. He was in his early 50s. Lean, with the particular economy of movement that Ryan associated with men who'd spent years somewhere that punished wasted motion. 2 tours in Iraq, then a decade doing signals intelligence. Then private consulting work they described as complicated and left there. He looked at Emily and didn't ask anything about her except, Do you need water? She said yes. Inside, Cal's workstation was what you'd expect from a specialist redundant. Hardwired, obsessively organized. He took the drive from Emily with the care of a surgeon accepting an instrument and plugged it in without comment. Ryan's phone rang while Cal was running the initial diagnostic. Vera. He stepped to the far side of the room and answered. I have the change, she said. No greeting, no preamble. This was how Vera operated. How deep? 3 holding companies, 2 LLCs, 1 trust. The trust is the top layer. Registered in Nevada. Which makes sense. Nevada trust law is built for privacy. But the brief pause. The trustee is a law firm. Chandler and Reeves LLC. Based in Tucson, Ryan felt it land. Reeves. As a name attached to a law firm, it's circumstantial. Law firms can have anonymous clients, but the firm was incorporated 11 years ago. Which you'll find interesting given your timeline. And the registered agent at formation. Another pause. Vera used pauses the way good prosecutors use silence. Thomas Allen Reeves. Same individual as the firm partner. Ryan closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. Please, thank you, Vera. This goes federal, she said again. Please, you know that. Yes, I want two things in exchange. Please, one when it goes, my name is not in the sourcing chain. Please, I'm retired. I like being retired. Done. Two, whoever the girl is that compiled this data, please, she's very good. Tell her I said that it matters. Ryan looked at Emily, please, who was watching Cal work and didn't know she was being discussed. Please, I'll tell her. He hung up. He walked back. Emily looked at him and read his face, please, because she was good at reading faces, and she said nothing for a moment. Please, just held his gaze, waited for him to say it. Thomas Allen Reeves, he said. Please, the trust is in his name. The law firm is his. It's been operational for 11 years. She received it. Please, not with visible collapse, not with a sound. She just received it. Please, the way you receive a blow that you saw coming, braced. Please, absorbing it through every layer, letting it settle into the place where you already knew it was going to go. Please, okay, she said finally. Her voice was steady. Okay, I'm sorry, don't. Not harsh. Please, just final. Let's just. She turned back to copy the drive. Already done, Cal said without looking up. Please, 3 copies. 2 encrypted, 1 plain for your federal people. Please, you want me to hold one here? Yes, Ryan said. Done. Cal leaned back and looked at his screens. Please, there's something else. Ryan walked to the station. Please. Cal pointed at a window on his left monitor, a feed Ryan didn't immediately recognize. Please. Grids of data moving in a pattern that meant something to Cal and required translation for anyone else. Your drive had a secondary partition, Cal said. Hidden. Please, whoever assembled this data, your girl. Me, Emily said from behind them. Please. Cal didn't turn around. Smart. The secondary partition has a timestamp log. Please. Every time someone accessed the files, it logged the device fingerprint. Please. Anonymous doesn't give you the person, but it logs the hardware signature. He paused. Please, someone accessed the files 7 weeks ago, before the drive left its original location. Emily went very still. Please. She's been carrying the drive for 4 months, Ryan said. Please, the access was before she started running. Right. Please. So whoever accessed it did so at the point of origin. Please. When the drive was still somewhere that someone else could get to it, Cal looked at the timestamp. 11:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ryan looked at Emily. Please. Did Tommy ever have access to your work laptop, your home? She was staring at the screen. Please. He came over for dinner, she said. 6 weeks before I found the apartment had been searched. Please, I excused myself to take a phone call. My laptop was on the desk. Please, the drive was in the bag next to it. 12 minutes. Please, Ryan thought. Long enough to access a partition, copy file signatures. Please, report back to Coates. He knew what was on it, Ryan said. Please, before you ran. He knew you had it, and he knew what it contained. Which means he's the one who told Coates, Emily said. He's not just a leak, he's been actively running information since the beginning. He's the reason both extraction attempts failed. He's the reason Reyes knew where I was last night. Her voice was doing something controlled and painful. Ryan recognized the sound of someone holding grief behind the firewall of necessary function. Call your father, he said. She shook her head. Not yet. Emily, not yet. She turned and looked at him. And her eyes were dry and her jaw was set, and there was something behind both of those things that was the furthest thing from fine. I need 5 minutes. Ryan looked at her, at the set of her shoulders. At the drive in Cal's hands, at the timestamp on the screen. 5 minutes, he said. He walked out to the step. The desert air was cooler than it had been this morning. The afternoon edging toward its own ending. He stood there and thought about Tommy Reeves with gas station sunflowers and a photo from a college graduation. About 11 years of showing up. About the exact, specific betrayal of choosing money over someone who trusted you with the most uncomplicated love they had. His phone buzzed. Text, not Marcus, not Emily, unknown number. We know where the drive is. We know where she is. You have 1 hour to deliver both before we stop being patient. Ryan stared at the text for a long moment. His pulse had gone up, he noted it. Logged it, and set it aside the way he set aside discomfort during diagnostic work. Because the feeling was real, but the focus had to be on the problem. Someone was watching the road, or watching a phone signal. Ease. Or watching Cal's property through means that Cal's physical cable infrastructure couldn't protect against because cable protected data. Ease, not location. He went back inside. We have a problem, he said. Ease. Cal was already moving. He'd seen the change in Ryan's face from across the room. Ease. The same way a person who spent years in signals intelligence learned to read the face of incoming. How long? Text says an hour. Assume less. Emily looked at Ryan. Ease. Her 5 minutes were up, apparently, because the look on her face was clear and operational and fully present. Ease. Who sent it? Unknown number, which means either Coates' people or someone acting on their behalf. He paused. Ease. Someone who knows we're here, Tommy, she said flatly. Ease. Or someone Tommy told. Cal was already pulling components. Ease. The plain copy goes with you. The encrypted copies stay here on separate hardware. Ease. No connection to each other. If they get in, they get nothing cohesive. He handed Emily a small case. Ease. The original drive, I'd recommend splitting from that separately. 2 vehicles, 2 routes. We only have 1 vehicle, Ryan said. Ease. You have my truck, Cal said. He held up a key. It's older than God and not registered to my current name. Ease. Use it. Ryan took the key. He looked at Emily. You take Cal's truck. Ease. Take the plain copy. Take the route through 347 slower, but no cameras between here and the county line. Where are you going? Same destination, different road. I'll take the original drive. He paused. Ease. They sent the text to my number, not yours, which means whatever they're tracking is attached to me. Ease. I'll draw them long enough for you to get clear. Emily's expression shifted. Ease. That particular shift that happened when someone was processing an act of deliberate self-exposure on their behalf and deciding what to do with it. Ease. That's not a plan, she said. That's you being a target. It's both, Ryan said. Ease. They don't match, Ryan. The evidence needs to get to someone federal, he said. Ease. You know the account details. You know the chain. Ease. You have the plain copy. Vera has the ownership documentation. Ease. You have everything you need. He held her gaze. I'm the distraction. Ease. You're the delivery. She looked at him for a long, still moment. He could see the argument forming and the assessment happening simultaneously, the part of her that wanted to push back and the part that was running the logic and arriving at the same place he had. Ease. You said you weren't most people, she said finally. Ease. I said that. I'm starting to understand what you meant. Ryan almost smiled. Ease. Almost. Call your father when you're clear of the county. Ease. Tell him everything. Give him Tommy's name. What do I tell him about you? He thought about it. Ease. Tell him I'm handling my part. She took the case from Cal. Ease. She held it for a moment, the way she'd held the original drive in the motel room, with the particular awareness of someone who understood exactly what they were carrying and exactly what it had cost to get there. Ease. Then she looked at Ryan and said, Don't get shot. That's been my plan since last night, he said. Ease. The corner of her mouth moved. Then she was out the door. Ease. And Ryan listened to Cal's old truck start and pull away. Ease. And when the sound had faded, he looked down at the original drive in his hand. Ease. Small, ordinary. The kind of thing you'd lose in a junk drawer and not find for 6 months. Ease. He pocketed it. He looked at you armed? He asked. Ease. Cal opened a drawer. Professionally good. Ryan picked up his truck keys. Ease. Give me 2 minutes to put some distance between me and this property. Ease. Then call 911. Report suspicious vehicles on the road. What suspicious vehicles? There will be some, Ryan said. Ease. Trust me. He went out to his truck and sat for a moment with the engine running. Ease. He looked at the text one more time. 1 hour. Assume less. Ease. He pulled out of Cal's property and onto the dirt road. Ease. And then onto the paved road, driving at exactly the speed limit. Ease. In exactly the direction that anyone tracking his phone signal would expect. Ease. His mirrors were clean for the first 3 miles. Then, ease. At the edge of his peripheral vision, the shape of a dark SUV appeared at the edge of the road ahead. Ease parked but idling. Lights off. Ryan didn't brake. Didn't accelerate. Ease. He drove past it at the same steady speed and watched in his mirror as it pulled out and fell in behind him. Ease. 1 vehicle. Probably not alone. He tightened his hands on the wheel once. Ease then loosened them deliberately. Fear was information. Ease. It told you that something real was happening. It didn't tell you what to do about it. Ease. Which was why you didn't let it make the decisions. Ease. He thought about Emily, already 20 miles away, with the evidence that could bring down a criminal network and expose a man who'd given her sunflowers at her college graduation and spent 11 years being trusted while working in the opposite. Ease. Direction of everything that trust was supposed to mean. Ease. He thought about Marcus Sinclair, sitting with Tommy Reeves somewhere on that compound. Ease. Having a conversation calibrated to reveal nothing. Ease. Holding the grief and the rage in both hands simultaneously like a man who had learned. Ease at enormous personal cost. How to carry things that should be impossible to carry. Ease. He thought about what Deke had asked him in the yard. Ease. Can you look Marcus in the eye and tell him if he's about to make a decision he can't undo? Ease. He drove. Behind him, the SUV maintained its distance. He's watching, following. Not yet. Whatever Coates' people were waiting for. They hadn't moved to intercept, which meant they wanted him to lead them somewhere. Which meant they still didn't know that Emily was already gone. He had one job right now. Stay on this road. Keep their attention. Give Emily time. He thought about a woman sitting alone in a diner, watching the door with practiced, exhausted vigilance. He thought about the moment he'd gotten out of his booth. He'd known at some level, even in that moment of pure instinct, he'd known it wasn't going to be simple. That you don't step between someone and the thing hunting them and come out of it unchanged. That the choice once made doesn't stop having consequences just because you survived the first one. He'd made it anyway. The SUV was still behind him. Still waiting. Ryan reached down and turned the radio on. Found a station playing something old Springsteen. The river, the opening guitar patient and steady, and full of something that was almost but not quite hope. He turned it up and he drove. The SUV stayed 3 car lengths back for 11 miles. Consistent, patient. The kind of following that said professional. Not amateur, amateurs crowded. Amateurs lost confidence and closed the gap. Whoever was behind him had done this before and knew that distance was their friend. Ryan knew it too, which was why he kept his speed exactly at the limit. His driving exactly unremarkable, his hands exactly loose on the wheel. He was a man going somewhere ordinary. He was giving them nothing to react to. His phone buzzed on the seat beside him. He glanced at it without picking it up. Emily. He let it go to voicemail because answering a call while being followed by people who were presumably monitoring his signal was the kind of mistake that changed outcomes. He'd call her back when the geometry of the situation had changed. The second vehicle appeared at mile 12. Different road. Merging from the right, another dark SUV, same model. Which told him this was coordinated and resourced. 2 vehicles meant they'd anticipated he might try to split off. They were bracketing him, one behind, one now running parallel on the adjacent road. Waiting for a merge point. Ryan did the math on the next 2 miles. There was an intersection at mile 14, a 4-way that would require him to make a choice. Left was back toward Tucson. Right was deeper into nothing. Straight ahead was a small commercial strip, the first signs of semi-civilization. A gas station and a feed store and a diner that wasn't the Sundown but had similar energy. He needed people around him before the vehicles closed. He pressed the accelerator, not dramatically a controlled increase. 10 miles over the limit, the kind of speed that creates distance without triggering pursuit. The SUV behind him maintained pace for 30 seconds. Then matched him. The one on the parallel road accelerated. They were done being patient. Ryan had known this moment was coming. He'd been counting on it. He hit the intersection and went straight into the commercial strip and pulled into the gas station at speed, braking hard and pulling around the back of the pumps so that his truck was between the building and the road. He was out of the truck before it fully stopped, the drive in his pocket, his phone in his hand, moving toward the entrance of the gas station with the specific, purposeful stride of someone who has somewhere to be and no time for anything that isn't that. The first SUV overshot the turn. The second one caught the turn, but came in too fast and had to brake hard to avoid the pump island. Ryan was inside the gas station. A teenager behind the counter looked up from his phone. Ease. An older man in work clothes was by the coffee machine. Ease. A woman with 2 kids was in the snack aisle. Is there a back door? Ryan asked the teenager. Ease. The teenager stared at him. Back door, Ryan said up again. Ease. Employee exit. Through the stockroom. Ryan was already moving. Ease. He went through the door marked employees, only into a stockroom that smelled like motor oil and old cardboard. Ease found the exit and came out the back into a narrow service alley. Ease. He called Emily. She picked up on the first ring. Where are you? Gas station on Route 93. Ease 14 miles east of Cal's. 2 vehicles on me. I'm out the back. He was moving while he talked. Ease. Heading toward the far end of the alley. Did you clear the county? 20 minutes ago. Ease. I'm at the point of contact. Federal, 2 agents from the Phoenix field office. Ease. Vera made a call. A pause, and in the pause the sound of indoor air and multiple voices. Ease. Ryan, they're taking the evidence. They want you too. They want your statement about the diner and everything after. Tell them to hold. He reached the end of the alley and assessed. Ease. The service road behind the strip ran another 100 yards to a residential block, actual houses. Ease. Actual people. Actual witnesses. At least I know what they said. Ease. 15. He paused. Emily. Yeah. The drive is still with me. Ease. The plain copy is what you have. Tell the agents the original has Cal's authentication timestamp and the secondary partition with the access log. Ease. That's the evidence of Tommy's direct involvement. Ease. They need the original. A brief silence. He could hear her relaying this. Ease. They want to know how you're going to get there, she said. Ease. Ryan looked at the residential block ahead, at the houses. Ease. At the driveways, at the fact that it was mid-afternoon and 2 or 3 of those driveways had vehicles in them. Ease. Which meant people were home, which meant ordinary civilian life was happening in immediate proximity to 2 SUVs full of Coates' people who were about to be extremely unhappy. Ease. Carefully, he said. Keep the line open. He pocketed the phone, without hanging up, and moved into the residential block. Ease. Walking at normal pace now, because running attracted attention and walking was invisible. Ease. He counted houses. 3rd driveway on the left had an older model pickup. Ease. Engine warm. He could feel the heat from 3 feet away as he passed. Ease. The house had its front door open behind the screen door, which meant someone was home and comfortable, not on high alert. Ease. He knocked on the screen door. A woman in her 60s answered. Ease. She had the look of someone who'd been interrupted mid-task and was deciding whether to be annoyed about it. Ease. Ryan said, Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. My truck broke down on the service road coolant line. Ease. I could smell it going. Is there any chance I could call a tow from here? Ease. I'll be out of your way in 5 minutes. The woman looked at him. Ease. At his arm, where the bandage from the night before was showing at his sleeve. Ease. At his face. You're bleeding, she said. He looked at his arm. Ease. The scrape had reopened, probably the exit from the gas station. Ease. It's from early old injury. I'm fine. She pushed the screen door open. Ease. Come in and use the phone. Wireless is better than cell out here anyway. He went inside. Ease. He called Marcus from the landline. Marcus picked up immediately. Ease. Which meant he'd been waiting. Where are you? Marcus said. Ease. 14 miles east of Phoenix. 2 of Coates' vehicles are in the area. I drew them away from Emily's route. Ease. She's with federal agents right now. He paused. The original drive is with me. Ease. I need extraction. A silence of exactly 4 seconds. Marcus processing. Calculating. Deke's 12 miles from you, he said. Ease. I'll send the location. Don't move until he gets there, Marcus. Ryan lowered his voice slightly. Ease. The woman had gone to another room, but houses had thin walls. Ease. We have the name. Another silence. Longer this time. Tommy, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Ryan said nothing. Ease. Because Marcus hadn't needed it to be confirmed. He'd known. Ease. Maybe not for certain until this moment, but he'd known the shape of it since Emily said first Thursday of every month in the motel room, and Marcus had gone to the window. Ease. Where is he now? Ryan asked in the workshop. I told him I needed him to go over some inventory. A pause. Ease. He doesn't know I know. Keep it that way until Deke gets to me. Ryan. Marcus's voice had dropped to something that wasn't quite operational anymore. Ease. Something heavier. When you get here, I need you to understand something. Ease. What I do next, we'll talk about it when I'm there, Ryan said. He's 15 minutes. I've known him for 11 years. I know. He came to my daughter's graduation. The sentence was almost nothing. He's almost inaudible. But Ryan heard the devastation in it, not rage. He's not betrayal in the cold sense. Grief, pure structural grief, is the kind that happens when something you built your understanding of the world on turns out to have been wrong. I know, Ryan said again. I'll be there. Don't do anything until I am. Marcus hung up. Ryan returned the phone to its cradle and looked up. The woman was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. She'd brought him a glass of water without asking. Which was the specific kindness of someone who recognized distress even when it was wearing composure's face. He took the water. He drank it. Tao coming? She asked. He's on the way, he said. Thank you, ma'am. She nodded once. The way people nod when they've made a private decision to ask no more questions. He waited by the front window, watching the street. And 6 minutes later, a motorcycle came around the corner, not Deke, but one of the men from the motel, the one who'd stood by the door at the compound. He slowed at the driveway without stopping. Ryan thanked the woman again and went out. Deke's holding the roadblock on 93. The man said without introducing himself. Two of ours cut the vehicles off a half-mile back. Flat tires on both nails on the road. Happens all the time out here. A pause that might have contained the ghost of a smile. You need to be somewhere. The compound, Ryan said. Truck. Leave it. I'll come back for it. He got on the back of the bike and they moved. The ride took 18 minutes. Ryan spent them thinking about Tommy Reeves and what Marcus had said. I've known him for 11 years, and what Deke had asked in the yard that morning. Can you look Marcus in the eye and tell him if he's about to make a decision he can't undo? He'd said he could try. Now he was going to find out. When they pulled into the compound, the energy had changed. The men in the yard were quieter, positioned differently, not casual. Two of them were near the workshop entrance. Not obviously, but deliberately. Whatever Marcus had told them, or whatever they'd understood from the shift in Marcus's manner, the compound had adjusted itself around the situation the way a body adjusts around a wound. Marcus was standing outside when Ryan got off the bike. Deke was beside him. They both looked at Ryan with the same expression, waiting, but not empty. Loaded waiting, the kind that required resolution. Ryan crossed to them. He handed Marcus the drive. Marcus took it. He held it for a moment in his closed fist. Then he looked at Ryan. Emily, he said, with the federal agents. Safe. She has the plain copy of the evidence and Vera's documentation of the ownership chain. Ryan met his eyes. It's enough to take Coates and the network down. The agents know about the financial connection to your chapter. They know a name. Marcus nodded slowly. They're going to want Tommy, Ryan said. Federal. Not, he stopped. Not us, Marcus said. Yes. Marcus looked at Deke. Deke's jaw was tight. Neither of them spoke for a moment, and in the silence, Ryan understood the full weight of what was being decided. 11 years. The kind of trust that becomes load-bearing, that holds up everything you build around it. And then you find out it was hollow the entire time. And the question becomes whether you respond with the rage of that betrayal or whether you hold the line that separates you from the thing that betrayed you. I need to talk to him, Marcus said, before the federal people get here. Marcus, not to hurt him, sharp and clean. To ask him why, a pause. I think I'm owed that. Ryan looked at him. This was the moment Deke had described, the moment that required someone with no debt and no loyalty to look Marcus Sinclair in the eye and say something that might not be welcome. You are owed that, Ryan said, and you should ask it. But you do it with Deke in the room and me in the room. And when he's done answering, we wait for the agents. Marcus held his gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. They walked to the workshop together. Deke opened the door first. Tommy Reeves was at the workbench at the far end. Going through inventory as Marcus had asked, and he looked up when the door opened with the easy, unhurried expression of a man who has nothing to hide, which was ease. Ryan understood in that moment the most specific thing Tommy was. He had spent 11 years perfecting the face of a man with nothing to hide. And he wore it so well that Marcus had never looked underneath. Until now. Tommy looked at Ryan and something moved behind his eyes. Fast and almost invisible. But it was their recognition. Not of Ryan specifically, but of what Ryan's presence meant. A stranger in the inner circle of the compound, standing beside Marcus and Deke. Meant the geometry had changed. Marcus, Tommy said. His voice was easy. Practiced. I thought you were making calls. I'm done making calls, Marcus said. He walked to the center of the room and stopped. He didn't move to the bench. He didn't close distance. He stood where he was, and the room arranged itself around that stillness. Tommy set down the clipboard. Something wrong, he said. I want to ask you something, Marcus said, and I want you to understand that I'm asking because you've been my brother for 11 years. Not because I need the information. I have the information. A pause. I need the answer. The ease drained from Tommy's face over the course of about 4 seconds. It didn't go all at once, it left in layers, like paint lifting in heat. Until what was underneath was a face that Ryan had never seen but immediately recognized. Cornered, calculating, already running the math. Marcus, why? Marcus said. It's just that. One word, and everything in it. Tommy looked at him. At Deke, at Ryan. Back to Marcus. You don't understand what it's been like, Tommy said finally. The defense came fast, too fast, pre-assembled. You have no idea what I've been carrying. The money, it was never about the money for the money. It was about Emily, Marcus said. The name cut through everything. You almost got my daughter killed. Tommy flinched. And the flinch was real, which was somehow the worst part, the part that told Ryan this wasn't a man without conscience. This was a man with a conscience who had made a long series of choices to override it. I never told them to hurt her, Tommy said. His voice had changed. The practiced ease was gone. What was left was raw and defensive and small. The deal was that they'd take the drive and she'd be fine. Coates promised. Coates sent Anton Reyes, Deke said from the wall. His voice was flat. You know what Reyes does? Tommy looked at the floor. You knew, Marcus said. Not an accusation. Something worse than an accusation, an acknowledgement. You knew what it meant when they sent Reyes and you didn't warn her. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Ryan had heard in 2 days. Marcus said. Marcus, how much, Tommy? A long pause. Over 3 years, about 800,000. Deke made a sound. Not surprise. Something colder. $800,000, Marcus said quietly. And the information you sold, 3 of our supply routes were hit. 2 of our people were arrested on charges that shouldn't have held up. One of them did 18 months. He paused. Frank Delgado did 18 months because you sold the route. Tommy's face had gone pale. I didn't know they'd use it that way. You sold information to criminals, Marcus said. What did you think they'd do with it? No answer. Ryan had been standing near the door. He spoke now. Tommy. The federal agents are going to be here in roughly 30 minutes. Whatever you tell them, and you need to tell them everything, will determine what the next 10 years of your life look like. He held the man's gaze. But right now Marcus asked you something. He asked why. Not why you needed the money, why you did it to him. Tommy looked at Ryan for a moment. Then at Marcus, and whatever armor was left dissolved. Because you never struggled, Tommy said. His voice had gone quiet and complicated. Not once, in 22 years, did you struggle. Everything you built, it just worked. People followed you. People respected you. I spent 11 years standing next to you, and I was proud of that. And he stopped. Breathed. I was tired of being the one who stood next to you. I wanted to be the one people came to. And Coates, he didn't offer me money first. He offered me influence. He said, if I helped him, there were people who'd know my name. Important people. A pause, and then the money started, and I told myself it was both. Marcus was very still. The stillness of someone receiving a wound and choosing not to move. You had my name, Marcus said. You had access to everything I had. That was never nothing. I know that, Tommy said. And the grief in his voice was real. Ryan could hear it. He suspected Marcus could hear it too. I've known that every day for 3 years. I just stopped. I kept making the next choice. And the next one, until I was so far in that there was no version of stopping that didn't destroy me. And now? Marcus said. Tommy looked at him. Now I'm already destroyed. The room was quiet for a long time. Marcus turned and walked toward the door. He stopped beside Ryan without looking at him. Don't let him out of this room, he said. Either of you. Ryan said. Where are you going to call? My daughter, Marcus said. I haven't spoken to her since this morning, and she needs to hear from her father. Not from me as someone managing a crisis. He paused. There's a difference. He went out. Ryan stood with Deke in the workshop, and Tommy Reeves sat on a stool by the workbench, and nobody spoke. Tommy looked at his own hands for a while. Then he said, quietly, to no one in particular, the sunflower photo. From her graduation. I still have it. Neither Ryan nor Deke responded. There was nothing to respond to. 22 minutes later, two vehicles pulled into the compound, not Coates' people. Federal plates, which Cal would have confirmed to Emily before she gave them the address. Two agents got out of the first vehicle. Emily got out of the second one. Ryan saw Marcus cross the yard to her, and whatever happened in those first few seconds was private too far. Too quiet, too personal for anyone else to be part of. But he saw Marcus put both hands on his daughter's face the way fathers do when they need to see that the person in front of them is real and whole and actually standing there. And he saw Emily put her hand over one of his. Then she looked up and found Ryan across the yard. She walked to him. The agents were moving toward Deke, who was already handling the operational details with the competence of someone who'd done the math on this before they arrived. Emily stopped in front of Ryan. You drew them off for 20 minutes, she said. Something like that. The agents said without the original drive and the access log, Tommy's connection was circumstantial. She looked at him. You knew that the evidence needed to be complete, he said. You could have. She stopped. Started again. You made yourself a target to protect the case. That's one way to say it. What's another way? Ryan thought about it. I finished what I started. She looked at him with that full, unguarded attention that she'd given him in the diner, the look that happened when circumstances stripped away everything performative and left only what was actually there. You should get that arm looked at properly, she said. The bandage was soaked through now, the scrape having turned into something that needed actual treatment. Probably. There's an agent who's also a paramedic. I'll send him over, Emily. She stopped. He asked. Not operationally. The actual question. She considered it honestly. He saw her consider it, actually take it in and think about it instead of deflecting. I've been carrying that drive for 4 months, she said. And now I'm not. And I thought I'd feel lighter, but I mostly just feel, she searched for the word, tired and sad, and like I need to sleep for about 100 years. A pause. But also she looked across the yard at her father, who was now talking to the agents with Deke beside him. He's operational again, handling it. I don't feel alone. Good, Ryan said. That's because of you, she said, not entirely, but significantly. He looked at her. At the dark hair and the eyes that had been watching the door when he walked into the diner, and the face that had asked him, why did you do that in the wreckage of the shooting, and not quite believed his answer. I was just eating dinner, he said. She made that sound again, the almost law. The one she'd been doing since the motel, the one that was becoming more fully a laugh each time. This time it got all the way there. Sure you were, she said. Across the yard, Marcus looked over at them. His expression was still controlled, still carrying the enormous weight of the day, the betrayal. The grief, the confrontation in the workshop, all of it. But when he looked at Ryan, something shifted in it. Not quite a smile. Something that a smile was downstream of. Recognition, acknowledgement. The specific look of a man who has spent 22 years knowing exactly who he can trust and has just added a name to a list he doesn't add names to easily. He held Ryan's gaze for a moment, nodded once. Ryan nodded back. The agents were inside with Tommy now. Deke was coordinating with quiet efficiency. The compound had reorganized itself again, still the same people. The same property. But everything rearranged around a new reality. The way a house rearranges itself after a wall comes down. Ryan's arm throbbed steadily. He was tired in a way that had roots in last night but branches in every direction. He thought about his truck at the gas station on Route 93. His apartment. His shift tomorrow, which he was almost certainly going to miss. He thought about a second booth from the window, left side. Where you could see both the door and the parking lot. He thought about the specific moment, that crackling, galvanizing, entirely involuntary moment when he'd gotten out of that booth. The paramedic agent came over and looked at his arm with professional assessment. You need stitches, he said. I figured, Ryan said. I can do it here or we can get you to a clinic. Here is fine. Emily sat beside him while the agent worked. She didn't say anything, which was fine. Ryan didn't need her to say anything. He just needed her there, which she was. The sun was doing what the Arizona sun did in late October afternoons, going down hard and orange and enormous across the flat edge of the desert, turning everything copper for about 20 minutes before the dark came in fast and the temperature dropped. Ryan watched it happen. He sat still while his arm was stitched. He breathed the specific cold coming in smell of desert evening. He thought about what Marcus had said in the compound room this morning. I've been running an organization for 22 years. One of the things that's kept it alive is knowing who to trust when it matters. And then I'm going to trust you. Ryan had understood at the time that it meant something. He understood now more fully what it had meant. Not a transaction. Not gratitude for the diner. Something longer than that. Something that had to do with what Marcus had watched Ryan do, not the diner. Not even today, but the accumulation of it, the steadiness. The fact that in every moment where panic or self-interest would have been the reasonable response. Ryan had been neither, he'd just been present. Useful, clear-eyed. That was what Marcus had recognized. Not heroics. Not bravery in any theatrical sense. Just a man who stayed. Done, the agent paramedic said, and clipped the last suture. Keep it clean and dry for 72 hours. Thanks, Ryan said. The agent moved away. Emily looked at Ryan's arm, now properly bandaged, and nodded with the satisfaction of someone who'd been quietly worried about it and was relieved to have the worry resolved. You have anywhere to be tomorrow? She asked. Ryan thought about Calderon's. About the shift he'd already missed today. About the cars that would be waiting. The work orders, the ordinary reliable rhythm of the work that he was genuinely good at and genuinely cared about. Work, he said. Probably. I'll figure it out. She looked at him. For what it's worth, my father doesn't say things he doesn't mean. When he says he trusts someone, Emma, I'm just saying, I know what you're saying. He looked at her. I appreciate it. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked out at the compound, at her father. At Deke, at the federal vehicles, at the desert going dark at the edges of the property. It's not over, she said. Even with Tommy in custody and the evidence with the agent's coats is still out there. The network is still operating. It's going to take months. I know, which means this, she gestured at the compound. At the agents, at him. Doesn't just end tonight. Ryan nodded. He understood what she was saying. The drive was delivered. The immediate danger was reduced. But Coates was operational. Reyes was somewhere, and whatever Tommy had sold over 3 years had created vulnerabilities that couldn't all be closed in one evening. This wasn't the end. It was the end of the beginning. He could live with that. He'd been doing this since last night. After all, just moving forward through whatever the next thing was, without needing to see the whole map. One moment at a time. One decision at a time. Starting with get down and ending, for now, here, with stitches in his arm and the desert going dark and a woman beside him who had been alone for 4 months and tonight was not. The lights in the compound came on. Voices inside. Someone had made coffee. He could smell it from here. The particular strong brewed smell of a pot made for a lot of people who'd been running hard all day. Stood up. She looked at him. Come inside, she said. My father wants to talk to you. Ryan stood. He looked out at the desert for a moment, the flat immensity of it. He's the way it just kept going in every direction without apology. He's indifferent and enormous and exactly itself. Then he turned and walked inside. Ease. The coffee was exactly as strong as Ryan had expected. Ease. And the room was exactly as complicated. 6 men he didn't fully know. He's 2 federal agents, Deke, Marcus, Emily. Ease. And the specific compressed energy of where something enormous had just happened, and everyone was still deciding how to carry it. Ease. Ryan took a mug without asking and stood near the wall. Ease. Which was where he thought best. Marcus called the room to attention without raising his voice. Ease. He never raised his voice, Ryan had noticed. He just changed the quality of his silence, and everyone adjusted to it. Ease. The agents are going to need statements from everyone who had contact with Tommy in the last 72 hours, Marcus said. Ease. Deke will coordinate that. Nobody leaves the property until that's done. He looked around the room. Ease. After that, we go back to work. Not because nothing happened. Ease. Because of what happened. We don't stop. We don't collapse. Ease. We handle our business. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Ease. One of the agents, a compact woman named Reyes, no relation, and the name landed with its own private irony, pulled Marcus aside for a conversation that lasted 12 minutes. Ease. Ryan watched their body language from across the room. Ease. Marcus listened more than he spoke, which was always a sign with him that he was in receiving mode. Ease. Absorbing rather than reacting. At one point he asked a question, and Reyes answered it, and Marcus's expression didn't change. Ease. Which meant the answer was something he'd already anticipated and accepted. Ease. Emily came to stand beside Ryan. What are they telling him? She asked quietly. Ease. Probably the scope of the federal case, Ryan said. Ease. How long it runs, what it means for the chapter's exposure. What cooperation looks like versus non-cooperation. He paused. Ease. Your father's going to come out of that conversation with a decision already made. Ease. He won't announce it, he'll just act on it. Emily looked at Marcus. Ease. He'll cooperate. Yes, even though it costs him. Especially because it costs him, Ryan said. Ease. That's how he's built. She considered that. You figured him out quickly. He's not complicated, Ryan said. He's just consistent. Most people aren't consistent. So when someone is, it reads as complicated. She turned to look at him. Ease. That full attention look again, the one she'd been giving him since the diner. Ease. Each time with slightly more weight behind it, because each time there was more history between them to load it with. Ease. You're going to tell me you're just a mechanic again, she said. Ease. I am just a mechanic. She looked away, not dismissively, thoughtfully. Ease. My mother used to say that the most dangerous thing in any room was a quiet man who paid attention. A pause. Ease. She meant it as a warning. Should I be warned about myself? Emily's mouth moved. Ease. The full laugh this time. Ease. Unguarded. Ease. And it was a different sound than all the almost logs before it warmer. Ease. Less defended. The sound of someone who had been clenched around something for 4 months and was finally, incrementally, releasing it. Deke appeared at Ryan's elbow. Ease. He handed Ryan a plate of food, something someone had put together in the kitchen. Ease. The kind of practical, unfussy food that appears in working spaces when people have been running on adrenaline all day. Ease. He didn't say anything about it, just handed it over. Ease. Eat, Deke said. You look like you've been awake for 100 hours. 36, Ryan said. Ease. Same thing. Ease. Deke looked at Emily. Ease. Then at Ryan. Ease. Then at the space between them. Ease. And whatever conclusion he drew from that he kept entirely to himself. Ease. He was good at that. Ryan ate. The food was better than he expected. Ease. He thought about the turkey meal at the sundown diner that he'd barely finished before everything changed. Ease. And it seemed like something that had happened in a different version of his life that was related to this one, but not identical. Ease. The agent Reyes finished with Marcus and moved to Deke. Ease. Marcus crossed the room. He stopped in front of Ryan and looked at him with the steady ease, complete attention that Ryan had gotten used to, but didn't think he'd ever find unremarkable. Ease. They're going to need you in Phoenix for formal testimony, Marcus said. Ease. 2, maybe 3 sessions. They want everything you observed from the diner forward. When? First session tomorrow afternoon. Ease. If you can manage it. He paused. They'll work around your schedule after that. Ryan thought about Calderon's. His shift, the conversation he'd have to have with his employer about the last 2 days. He thought about all of that and understood that whatever shape his ordinary life had before yesterday, it was going to be a different shape now, and the only question was what that different shape turned out to be. I can manage it, he said. Marcus nodded. He didn't move to leave. There was something else which Ryan waited for. I want to say something, Marcus said. He said it like a man beginning something he'd been composing in his head for hours. Not as thanks. I don't have language for thanks that would be adequate, and I won't insult you by trying. He held Ryan's gaze. What I want to say is that I've spent a long time believing that trust was something you earned, slowly or not at all. These years, actions accumulated over time. Nothing instant. A pause. You made me revise that. Ryan said nothing. You acted without reason to, Marcus continued. Without obligation, without anything in it for you. And then when you had every reason to stop when you'd already done more than anyone could ask you, he kept going. He let that sit. That's not something I've seen often. In a long life, in a world that runs mostly on self-interest, that specific thing is rare. Most people would have done the same, Ryan said. No, Marcus said, quiet. Certain they wouldn't. I know because most people didn't. He paused. You did, Ryan met his eyes. He understood that Marcus wasn't wrong, technically. He also understood that what he'd done felt from the inside, less like heroism and more like the only available option that he could live with. He'd never found a way to articulate the difference in a way that satisfied other people. So he didn't try. I appreciate you saying it, he said instead. Marcus extended his hand. Ryan shook it. Firm. The same as the first time in the parking lot of the Mesquite Inn. Except that everything about what the handshake meant had changed from that first time to this one. One more thing, Marcus said. He reached into his jacket and produced a card plain. No logo, just a handwritten number. He handed it to Ryan. This is my direct line. Not routed, not monitored. The number 4 people have. Now 5. Ryan looked at the card. Then at Marcus. If you ever need anything, Marcus said. Anything that's within my power. You call. He walked away without giving Ryan the opportunity to respond. Which was, Ryan had come to understand how Marcus Sinclair operated when he'd said exactly what he meant to say and didn't want it diluted by what came after. Ryan held the card for a moment, then he put it in his wallet. He had no illusions about what it meant or what it didn't mean. It wasn't an induction. It wasn't a debt instrument. It was exactly what Marcus had said. It was a line to someone who considered Ryan the kind of person you kept a direct line to. That was significant. He understood that it was significant. He also understood that it changed nothing about who he was or what he'd do in any situation going forward. Which was probably why Marcus had offered it. The night deepened. The agents finished their preliminary interviews and departed with the understanding that formal statements would follow. 2 of them stayed the kind of precautionary presence that said the federal case was now open, and everyone connected to it was being managed. Tommy Reeves had been transported an hour ago. Ryan hadn't watched it happen. He'd been in the kitchen getting more coffee. Deke found him there. You staying tonight? Deke asked. Plain, matter of fact. The way Deke asked most things. Ryan thought about his apartment. His truck at the gas station on Route 93. The ordinary pull of his ordinary life, which was still there, still waiting patiently to be returned to. I should get back, he said. Deke nodded. One of the men will drive you to your truck. He paused. Tonight was stopped, started again. You held the line in a lot of places today. That doesn't go unnoticed. Deke, I'm not a man who says things I don't mean, Deke said. So receive it. Ryan received it. He went to find Emily to say he was leaving. He found her in the narrow hallway outside Marcus's office, not inside. Outside, standing with her back to the wall and her eyes closed and her head tilted back slightly. Which was the posture of someone taking 30 seconds to be completely still inside a day that hadn't offered much stillness. He almost didn't interrupt it. I'm heading out, he said quietly. She opened her eyes, looked at him. Now, it's late, You've got the agents here. Your father. He paused. You're covered. She held his gaze. He could see her processing the shift, not just the practical logistics, but the emotional register of it. What it meant for him to be leaving, what the compound would feel like once his particular presence was removed from it. I have a question, she said. Okay. And I want you to answer it honestly. Not with whatever version of it is most comfortable to say. That's how I answer most things. I know, she said. That's why I'm asking. He waited. When you walked out of that booth last night, she said, and you put yourself between me and those men, did any part of you think it through? Calculate the odds? Decide it was the right move based on anything rational? Ryan looked at her. He thought about the question, honestly, because that was what she'd asked for. No, he said. So it was pure instinct. Yes, which means you had no reason to do it. I had a reason, he said. It's just not a calculated one. She looked at him. What was the reason? He thought about how to say it. How to find the words for something that didn't have clean language, because it had never needed language. Before, it had just always been there. The way certain things were just there, built into the structure of who you were before you were old enough to name them. You look scared, he said. And you were alone. And nobody should have to be both of those things at the same time without someone doing something about it. Emily was quiet for a moment. That's it, she said. That's it. She looked at him with the expression that had been evolving across the last 36 hours, moving from assessment through wariness, through reluctant trust, and arriving somewhere that was simpler than all of those things and more durable. Ryan Mitchell, she said quietly. Yeah, I'm going to say something, and I need you to not deflect it with a joke or a practical observation. I don't make jokes, he said. I know. That was a practical observation. She almost smiled. That's what I mean. He waited. I've spent 4 months with nobody, she said. Not from lack of people willing. From necessity, because every person I was close to was a potential liability or a potential target. 4 months of being completely alone in the way that goes down to the bone. The kind of alone where you stop expecting that to change. She paused. And then you got out of a booth in a diner because I looked scared. And in 36 hours, she stopped, found the words. You reminded me what it feels like when someone is actually in your corner. Without agenda, without calculation, just in your corner. Ryan looked at her. So whatever comes next, she said. And I know there's a lot of next federal case. Coat's still out there, my father's chapter, working through everything, whatever it is. I don't want to go through it the same way I went through the last 4 months. Alone, he said. Alone. He understood what she was saying and what she wasn't saying. And he understood that both were genuine and both mattered. And he understood that the thing between them, whatever it was becoming, had been built in the most compressed and consequential 36 hours either of them had experienced. Which should have made it suspect, but somehow made it the opposite. Pressure revealed things. He'd learned that from engines. The components that held under pressure were the ones you could actually rely on. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She looked at him steadily. You just said you were leaving. I'm going to get my truck, he said. And then I'm going to go home and sleep for about 8 hours and call in to work and figure out what my schedule looks like. And then I'll be back in Phoenix for the federal interview tomorrow afternoon. He held her gaze. I'm not going anywhere. The distinction landed. He saw it land. Okay, she said. Simply. The way she'd said okay in the motel room when he told her he was fine, just that single word, doing the work of something much larger. He nodded. He started to turn Ryan. He looked back. She crossed the distance between them and put her arms around him, not dramatic. Not prolonged, just a real and complete embrace, the kind that said everything that the conversation had been working toward and said it more efficiently than language. He put one arm around her and felt the tension in her shoulders. The 4 months of carrying it all without being able to put it down. And he understood that this was also part of what was ending tonight. She pulled back, looked at him once, clear and direct. Then she went back to the main room, because there was more to handle, and she was her father's daughter, and handling things was what she did. Ease. Ryan stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he went to find his ride. Ease. The drive back to Route 93 was quiet. The man driving didn't try to make conversation, ease which Ryan appreciated. The desert night was cold and absolutely clear, ease. The stars doing their enormous thing overhead, and Ryan sat in the passenger seat and let the stillness of the last hour settle into its proper place. Ease. His truck was where he'd left it, behind the gas station pumps. Ease. The teenage clerk had apparently moved it to the side lot. At some point during the afternoon, there was a note under the windshield wiper that said, "Moved your truck? Ease. Hope everything's okay," in handwriting that slanted hard to the right. Ease. Ryan pocketed it. He sat in the truck for a minute before starting it. Ease. He thought about Victor Coates, who was somewhere in the state tonight. Ease. Operational, still running a criminal network that had $14 million documented dollars moving through it, and undoubtedly more that Emily hadn't reached. Ease. Who had sent Anton Reyes to a roadside diner and almost very nearly solved his problem in a way that would have been irreversible. Ease. Who still had resources and reach and no particular reason to consider himself finished just because federal agents had taken one of his informants and a collection of financial records. Ease. He thought about the months ahead, the testimony, the case building, ease, the specific patience required for federal processes, ease, which moved like deep water, powerful and inevitable but not fast. Ease. He thought about what Vera had said, "It goes big and it goes slow." Ease. He could live with slow. He'd spent his whole life doing important things at the pace they actually required. Ease, without rushing them, because rushing felt more like action. Ease. He fixed engines. He knew that the right speed for a repair was the speed that got it right. Ease. He started the truck. He drove back toward Tucson on the same roads he'd driven in the other direction 36 hours ago. The same desert. Ease. The same dark. The same stars. Everything externally identical. Ease. Everything internally rearranged. His phone buzzed. Ease. A text from Emily, "Get home safe." He looked at it at a red light. Ease. 3 words. He thought about 4 months of no one to send 3 words to. Ease. He thought about what it cost to send them now, not much. For most people. But for someone who'd spent that long building walls against exactly this kind of contact, those 3 words were a significant act. He texted back, "Will do. Get some sleep." Her response came back in under a minute. Ease. Not yet still. Things to handle. He smiled. He hadn't fully smiled in 36 hours. He'd had expressions that adjacent to smiles. Ease. Things that came close, but this was the real thing. Ease. Unguarded, unplanned. He put the phone down and drove. Ease. He thought about the compound, about Marcus standing in his kitchen doorway with coffee for everyone. Ease. Moving through the aftermath of the worst day his organization had experienced in years with the same deliberate composure he brought to everything, not because he wasn't feeling it, ease, but because feeling it and functioning were for Marcus Sinclair, ease, not mutually exclusive. He thought about Deke's 17 years beside Marcus, ease, the kind of loyalty that didn't need performance or explanation, ease, that just existed as an operating fact. He thought about Tommy Reeve, ease, in a federal holding facility somewhere tonight, with a photo on his phone of a young woman at her college graduation holding gas station sunflowers. Ease. He thought about what $800,000 had cost. Ease. Not in the financial ledger sense. In the actual ledger, what it had taken from Tommy, ease, from the people whose trust he'd sold, from Marcus, ease, from Emily, from Frank Delgado, doing 18 months on a compromised route. Ease. The full accounting. The one that didn't show up in any spreadsheet. Ease. He parked in front of his apartment at 11:40. Ease. He sat for a moment in the truck before going in. The neighborhood was quiet. Ease. His apartment was dark. Everything exactly as he'd left it, duffel gone. Ease. One coffee cup in the sink. The ordinary evidence of a life that was his and small and entirely sufficient. Ease. He went inside. He called Calderon's voicemail and left a message about tomorrow. Ease. Honest without being detailed. Then he sat on the edge of his bed and looked at the room around him and let himself be still for the first time in 36 hours. Ease. He thought about the second booth from the window. Ease, left side. He thought about a woman watching the door. Ease. He thought about the moment before he moved. In his memory, the moment had a particular quality, not heroic. He's not afraid, not even fully conscious of itself as a decision. He's just a clarity, clean and complete. The way clarity arrived when all the noise fell away and only the essential thing remained. She's scared, she's alone. Nobody's moving, so he moved. He lay back on the bed without taking his boots off and stared at the ceiling and thought about what Marcus had said. That specific thing is rare, and he thought, maybe. Maybe it is, but it didn't feel rare from the inside. It felt like the only option that was actually available to a man who had to live in his own skin afterward. He'd seen enough people make the other choice, the one that preserves safety and comfort at the cost of something they never quite recovered, to know what that looked like in the years after. The specific quality of someone who had had the moment and passed on it. He'd never wanted to know what that felt like. Now he never would. His arm throbbed steadily, the stitches tight and clean. He thought about Emily sending him to the agent paramedic, the quiet efficiency of it. The way she'd handled it without asking if he wanted help. Just identified that it was needed and made it happen. He thought about the 4 months she'd spent being competent and alone. And how those two things had calcified around each other until she'd stopped being able to imagine them separately. He was going to make sure she learned to imagine them separately again. He didn't know what the next months looked like in specific terms. The testimony, the case, Coates still out there, the chapter recalibrating around a betrayal that had lived inside it for 3 years. The specific unknowns were numerous, but the shape of it was clear enough. He'd show up, he'd do what was needed. He'd be honest and steady, and he'd pay attention. Which was the only thing he'd ever actually been reliably good at. And when it was over, whenever and however it was over, he'd figure out what the rest looked like from there. That was enough. That had always been enough. He was almost asleep when his phone rang. Not Emily. Not Marcus. An unknown number, different from the threat text, different area code. Different structure, he answered it. Mr. Mitchell. A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped with the specific cadence of someone who had been awake as long as he had and was operating through it. My name is Special Agent Diana Howell. I'm the lead on the Coates investigation out of the federal field office in Phoenix. A brief pause. I understand you've had quite a day. You could say that, Ryan said. I've reviewed the preliminary statements and the evidence Miss Carter delivered this afternoon. I've also reviewed the access log from the secondary partition on the drive. Another pause. With a different quality. Not procedural, deliberate. Mr. Mitchell. The access log contains a device fingerprint. Our technical team ran that fingerprint against known devices in our database. Ryan was fully awake now. Thomas Reeves's personal laptop is the match, Howell said. Which you were expecting. But there's a secondary fingerprint. A device that accessed the partition 6 days before Reeves did. A different machine. Ryan sat up. We weren't expecting that, Howell said. Miss Carter wasn't expecting that. It appears someone accessed the data even before Reeves knew the drive existed. The room was very quiet. Which means, Ryan said slowly, that Reeves wasn't the first leak. He was the second. Correct. Howell's voice was steady. Someone inside Meridian Transport had access to Miss Carter's work environment before she compiled the drive. Before she started running. Before any of this began. A pause. Someone who set the whole thing in motion. Ryan stood up. He was fully vertical, boots still on, the fatigue of 36 hours gone as if it hadn't happened. Does Emily know? He said. Not yet. I wanted to contact you first because you're connected to the people who need to be managed carefully right now. A pause. Mr. Mitchell. Whoever this second person is, they're not in the chapter. They're not in Coates's visible network. They're upstream of all of it. And they've known about Miss Carter and the evidence since, before she knew she had a target on her back. Ryan thought about 4 months of running. 2 failed extractions, Reyes showing up at the diner with specific current information about Emily's location and appearance. He thought about something else. Something Emily had said in the truck, that he'd filed away and not returned to. I've been trying to figure out who it is for 3 weeks. Ease. I went through everything I had. He thought about the timing. Ease. Someone upstream, deeper than Coates, deeper than Tommy. Ease, you need more from me, he said. Yes, Howell said. Ease, I need you in Phoenix tonight, not tomorrow afternoon. Ease, I need everything you remember, not just what you observed. Ease, but what people said. The specific words. In the compound. Ease, in the truck, at Cal's location. She paused. You have the kind of memory for detail that we rarely encounter in civilian witnesses. I'll be there in 90 minutes, Ryan said. Ease. He was out the door in 4 minutes. He drove back toward Phoenix in the dark. Ease. Springsteen faintly audible on the radio, until he turned it off because he needed silence to think clearly. Ease. And what he needed to think about was a second fingerprint and a person who existed upstream of everything they'd uncovered today and who had been watching Emily since before she knew she needed watching. Ease. He called Marcus from the road. Marcus answered on the second ring. Ease. He was awake, of course. He was. There's a second source, Ryan said. Ease. He laid it out clean. Howell's call. The fingerprint. Ease. The timeline. He spoke for 2 minutes without interruption. Ease. When he finished, Marcus was quiet for exactly 5 seconds. Emily, Marcus said. Not a question. The acknowledgement of a man whose daughter was, he's right now, at his compound surrounded by people he had reason to trust, and one category of person he didn't yet fully understand. She's safe, Ryan said. Howell knows. The agents there know. I'm heading in to give testimony. He paused. But Marcus, this second person is deeper than Coates. Deeper than the chapter leak. This is someone with access to Meridian's internal systems and a reason to want the evidence buried that's separate from everything we've looked at today. Meaning the criminal network is bigger than what Emily found, Marcus said. Meaning what Emily found is one piece of something larger, Ryan said. And someone at a level we haven't reached yet has been managing it from above. Marcus processed that. What do you need from me? Keep Emily on that compound tonight. Don't let anyone in or out that you don't personally account for. He paused. And get Deke to go back through every interaction with Meridian's staff or contractors over the last year. Anyone who had a reason to know Emily worked in their audit department. Done. Marcus's voice had gone fully operational. No hesitation, no processing, just the clean execution of a man who had been making decisions under pressure since before Ryan was born. Ryan. Yeah. Be careful, I will. He hung up. He drove. The Phoenix lights were visible ahead, the city glow against the dark sky. And Ryan pressed the accelerator and felt the familiar weight of an unfinished problem pressing against the inside of his chest, not dread, not fear, but the specific urgency of someone who understood that the work wasn't done and had decided, without drama or deliberation, to go back to it. He thought about what he'd said to Emily in the hallway. I'm not going anywhere. He'd meant it simply, in the moment. He understood now that it was also literally, specifically true that the thread he'd picked up when he got out of that booth in the Sundown Diner was longer than he'd known. Ran deeper than he'd anticipated, and connected to something that was going to require more of him than one extraordinary day. He was fine with that. He thought about Vera's voice on the phone. Whoever the girl is that compiled this data, she's very good. He thought about Emily in 4 months of motels and burner phones. He's alone and exhausted and afraid and still doing the work. Still maintaining the evidence, still running toward the truth, even when the truth was what was getting her hunted. She deserved to know what she was up against. The full picture. Not the manageable version. He'd make sure she got it. He'd make sure all of it, the second fingerprint. The upstream source. The full scope of what Victor Coates was operating inside of came into the light. However long it took. However many sessions in federal offices. However many nights driving back and forth across the desert. However many complications still waiting in the parts of the network they hadn't mapped yet. He would be present for all of it. That was the decision he'd made. Not last night in the diner, not in the motel parking lot. Not in the compound or on the road to Phoenix. He'd made it in pieces. Each piece accumulating until the whole thing was simply true, the way water fills a space not by deciding to, but by going to the lowest available point, finding the shape of what it's in, and being exactly that. This was who Ryan Mitchell was. Not a hero in any constructed sense. He's not a man who went looking for moments that required courage. He's just a man who, when someone was scared and alone, moved toward them instead of away. Who paid attention when other people looked elsewhere. Who finished what he started and stayed where he said he'd be. The federal building in Phoenix was lit when he pulled in. Howell was already at the entrance, coffee in hand. Jacket on despite the hour. She looked at him with the specific appreciation of someone whose witness showed up at midnight without being asked twice. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Let's get started," Ryan said. They went inside, and somewhere behind him, in an Arizona desert compound that had seen too much in one day and would need time to find its footing again. Emily Carter sat with her father in a quiet room and drank bad coffee and did not feel alone for the first time in 4 months. And somewhere in Phoenix, a federal case opened its next chapter wider and deeper than anyone had walked into yesterday morning. And in the middle of all of it, connecting the pieces, steady and clear-eyed and exactly where he'd decided to be. Was a mechanic from Tucson who had gotten out of a booth in a diner because a woman looked scared. That was the whole of it, and the whole of it was enough. The man who had always been invisible finally stood in the full light, not because he sought it. Not because he needed it, but because the people around him finally knew how to see him. And what they saw was someone who, in the moment that defined everything, had chosen to be exactly who he was. That was not nothing. That was everything.